I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. Andrew Kuo, reporting live from the secret police station in Chinatown. What's going on over there?
Listen, I'm going to tell you honestly, my apartment is open to a 6-course, $110 dinner for strangers who want to meet up with other strangers. Also a police station. Also, there's a secret basketball league that's being held in my apartment. You don't really have to know all about that. It's attached to the cat fighting ring I have going on. A lot of stuff happening in this 2-bedroom apartment.
For years, I've known you as Andrew Kuo, the editor-in-chief of Mapo Tofu magazine.
Oh, we're running
the predominant publication dedicated to all things Mapo Tofu. Turns out you've been operating a secret Chinese government police station from beneath the river.
It's like, oh my God, the Cookies interns, get out of the cage. We got some prisoners to lock up over here. Oh, there's too many interns running around. Got to get more cages.
I'm, of course, referring to the conviction of, I guess, a Chinese national who was apparently pled guilty to running a secret Chinese police station out of a Chinatown office. Was that what happened here?
Apparently, this is not a well-reported story, so I challenge its drama or its impact. But allegedly,
sounds like exactly what a Chinese secret policeman would say.
Tell us what the article was about.
Man, it was really confusing.
I'm saying.
I just know the guy pled guilty.
Look
the
who's sweating now.
The charges was from like a year ago, like last spring.
Was he
But
just
pled
talking
guilty.
shit? Yeah. Because okay, now,
Is this a news story? Who can say?
Police officers can enforce the law, right? So if you are eating mapo tofu and you don't see the walk sign and you scuttle across Canal Street, I might lock you up in my Chinese prison for jaywalking. But as a citizen, you can be like, well, let me see your credentials. If you're not a New York City police officer, you cannot make a Chinese citizen's arrest.
I mean, that seems fair. I couldn't tell if they were actually making arrests or they were just a cop with an office who works for the Chinese government.
I'm a Netflix head, so my first thought was like, did China lock up like a teacher in Beijing? So it's like, okay, round someone up in Chinatown. We need like tit for tat here. We need to flex our judicial muscle a little bit to show them that they can't lock up who's playing in China right now. Pat Beverly is in Israel. Is Jalil Okafor in China?
Could have been something along those lines. It very much does seem like someone presented this idea to someone within the Chinese government. It's like, all right, I'm a cop. I work, for the Chinese government. I'm law enforcement. Why don't I move to New York? I'll live in Chinatown and just kind of sniff around a bit. After all, the NYPD has offices in 16 international places. So the Chinese government, look, as far as I know, they're just making New York safer. The more cops, the better, I say.
And every story has a grain of truth. So however skeptical we are to it now, maybe there's someone being like, okay, you guys don't have paperwork. You're an illegal alien. I'm going to snitch on you if you don't get in this damn cage. And these guys are like, I'm being locked up in a Chinese prison on Mott Street.
Unclear if there were holding tanks.
I mean, are there still those warehouse spaces full of migrant workers that have been famous in downtown New York for like 40 years. You know, they were like during the Giuliani era, I believe, there were raids and they were finding just like bunk beds, like Hong Kong style living, right?
Well, also, even in this situation, maybe the person from the Chinese government is, say, investigating the snakeheads, the people who do illegal operations with human trafficking, things like that. Like, they could actually be here not as a insidious spy for a communist enemy of ours, but instead trying to fight against crime, just like the NYPD.
Yo, maybe, yeah, exactly. Maybe the good guys aren't always the Americans, and the Chinese government's like, yo, go there and bring back Jeremy Lin. We need to talk to him. It's like, well, how do I do that? It's like, I don't know, set up a fake precinct.
There's a human trafficking ring that's bringing people illegally from China to New York City, and we're going to put an end to it with this office. And that's like the plot of some movie with Sean Connery.
Yeah, but who would you cast as the Asian person? There's this new espionage show on Netflix starring Keira Knightley, and her love interest, who obviously gets got in like right in the beginning, is Asian. And everyone's like, whoa, Keira Knightley has an Asian boyfriend? And I'm like, so what? We have illegal police precincts above the noodle shop.
Watched a little of that show. I think you're talking about Black Doves. Didn't think it was very good.
It starts off a little goofy, but it is watchable. The stuff going on right now on my streaming network platforms is straight up trash, dude. Dune ain't doing nothing.
Yeah, it's garbage out there in these streaming streets. I tried to watch Black Doves, and I did respect that it lets you know that it's ass right away. They're like, don't take this show seriously. FYI.
Listen, we don't want to tease the dunking statistics just yet. Stick to non-basketball topics.
It's like, look, I know you've tuned into this Netflix series. It's set in UK or wherever. Here's Keira Knightley. You've heard of her as an actress, but just so you know, do not take this product seriously. We're going to have a guy saying, I'm being followed, who's going to stop and make a bunch of phone calls in the opening scene of the show. And then there's no evidence that he's followed, but instead someone snipes him from across the water from where he didn't know that he was going to run. Like, oh, say less. This is deeply unserious, but also kind of sucked.
I don't want to side with Quentin Tarantino, but didn't he say like all these shows are basically have the trappings of cinema, but have none of the kind of storytelling pace to tell something coherent? So it's like you got 12 hours of this thing that looks like a movie, but each episode has to end in kind of a cliffhanger. So like stuff is not either believable or worthy of your attention. It's just ambient. And I love ambient everything, but still, he kind of has a point. And I do, however unsavory of a person he is, respect his body of work. Like those are really great movies.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I'm not even trying to dog on this random show, Black Doves, because I just mean it's not. It doesn't. Everything doesn't have to be serious. I just meant that they let you know right away. This is not one of those serious shows. An alternative to that would be The Agency, which is a remake of the French spy show, The Bureau. And that's with Fassbender. I want to say that's on Showtime, I believe, or
it is
something like that.
Paramount Plus, if you have that, right?
I saw the first episode. It was good. And clearly they're trying to make a serious show.
It was good. What are you talking about? That was even worse than the Keira Knightley show. Fassbender is the best part of it, but that show is trash.
I've only seen the first episode, and it was a kind of a beat for beat remake of the French one, which I've seen. So I couldn't really even gauge it on whether it was good or bad, because it just was the exact same thing, but with Jodie Turner-Smith instead of the actress they had, or Fassbender instead of that guy.
Maybe it was lost in translation, because the French language, the French culture has like subtleties to it that maybe don't translate to Fassbender and like a Showtime show, because it's very much like, I love you, but I have to go. I'm an assassin. It's like, no, wait, am I an operative? It's like, but who are you? It lacked a certain je ne sais quoi that I think the Bureau probably nails. And this one is just like an American police station in Paris.
So the Bureau was, I think it maybe 6 seasons. It was notoriously hard to find online because it wasn't streaming anywhere. Now I think you can just buy a whole season at a time for like $20 on Apple or whatever. But it was very hard to find. But it had the reputation of being like the best spy series ever, and maybe for some of the reasons you're saying, just that French je ne sais quoi. It just feels like espionage. Is that a French word? It has to be. Espionage.
Listen, you bake the baguettes. All of a sudden they're Italian, right? You bake the baguettes, you make the eclairs, and you're an assassin.
Hey, I want to bring this back to the Italians for a second here, and I just saw your Twitter yesterday, and you're really excited about this new kind of super dirty martini.
Oh, it went viral. That wasn't just me. Someone
but it was so you.
Oh, would you not try that martini with like all the pickle juices and a splash of olive oil? I mean, people were like, this is salad dressing. This is an abomination. I'm like, fuck it. I used to drink Old English.
So you're saying you're into it?
I would try it for sure. I mean, I love a Bloody Mary, and just put some tomato juice in that, John, and it's basically a Bloody Mary.
I mean, but it's a gimmick though, right?
I mean, what isn't a gimmick in the martini world?
That's true.
It's a platform for gimmick.
I would say that this feels 2010.
Yeah, it is nostalgic, isn't it?
Right? There's something about it that feels like a throwback to.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Era.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that. It's David Chang. It's weird food concoctions like, oh, you know what?
Wiley Dufresne, right.
Now. Anchovies. Have you thought about that? Anchovies are so funky. Yeah,
right.
We used to hate them. Now we love them.
If this was truly 2024, to be like, the progressives are putting Jardiniere juice in our martinis. Like, it is, the social media is losing me fast, but I do love, like, what color is this dress? That stuff is always fun for me. And it is a distinct vibe and nostalgia, like the Berenstein Bears debate. So this is like, is this a real martini? PEDs into my liver.
So you pull up, you leave your secret police station, you go across the street over to Little Italy.
That snakehead sake, snakehead rice wine.
You say, hey, I'm rolling up in Il Linguini. Give me the funkiest martini you have, the dirtiest that they are. Want that. You want that olives. You want a little sprig of basil, maybe. You want anchovies. You want garlic.
If it works, I'll do it. You just can't throw bullshit into there. But like this one, I believe it was like a splash of pickle juice, olive juice. It was like the dirtiest martini, which was basically like a puttanesca without the fish in a martini glass. I think what lost people was like the little drops of olive oil on top, which is like a mixologist gimmick that I don't really care much for. But yeah, I'll try. I don't love a dirty martini. I like mine up with a twist, dry. But yeah, I like pickle juice. I got jars of pickle juice in my refrigerator, man.
Martini with a twist, a little more refined, Andrew.
It is.
Oh,
I'm refined though. I'm
you
running
are.
this. I'm running this cop shop with class, buddy.
I'm not one of those chuckleheads who wants my martini perfumed with vermouth and olives. Give me the twist.
Yeah. Sometimes if it's too confusing, I'm like, can you just pour the vodka in a cup of ice for me? Like that's all I kind of want. Am I
Like,
a
yeah,
Russian
skip the
operative?
martini glass,
Yeah,
just vodka on ice.
kinda. Like I really love that drink. Um, I all right. I gotta come clean. In my 2-bedroom apartment, I'm also running a Russian police precinct. And we're just like sipping on that Stoli.
When you pull up to the vodka and you ask for your favorite drink, no, I think the enduring appeal of the martini makes sense.
That's
It's
my
old.
go-to drink.
It's
Yeah.
it's very strong. It's very cold. It comes in a whimsical glass, but it's also old timey. And I was down in Philly over the last few days, and just going down there for work. But first off, thanks to all the Philly friends, whether they're cookies or outside of cookies, offered all these incredible suggestions for places to eat and drink. Filled up that map in with 30 some places in about 10 hours.
So you
Very
went
cool.
to the Gino Steaks, right? Gino's Cheesesteaks. You went to Wells Fargo Center for more cheesesteaks.
I mean, the funny thing is, people who we know and people who live there didn't even talk about cheesesteaks, right?
What?
But
Get outta here.
when you look up like iconic dishes on Eater Philly, it's like 9 of them are cheesesteak adjacent. Like they're just sandwiches over and over and over. I'm like, I don't know. They probably can do better than that. And yeah, so had a good time down there. There was a specific kind of look that I want to bring up here. And it reminded me of the martini as like this classic idea. I haven't seen this particular aesthetic in New York really. It's someone maybe, let's say in their 20s, 30s, 40s, like a younger person who wears a camel overcoat, very sort of dressy, with a newsboy cap.
Oh, Philly is.
But it doesn't come off as someone trying to be twee. You follow? It feels as if it's generational learned behavior. Where
Is it
we're
like
going to go
some
down
Marlon Brando shit?
That's
Like,
what I'm saying. I was trying to identify it. It wasn't someone play acting as being old timey in a twee way that you would associate even with like, the suiting and haberdashery trends of a few years back. It was very much like we're going down to Broad Street to go by this, old edifice of a beautiful building. And just like my dad did and his dad did, I'm putting on my camel coat and my newsboy hat.
right. It's not like someone coming from Fashion Week wearing a brand new cowboy hat. It's somebody who actually has been in the sun riding a horse with a cowboy hat.
It did feel as if there was not authenticity of it in that way of this person sells newspapers. Like if you need to read all about it, this guy is there. Like, oh, boom, here you go. That'll be 1 nickel, please. But it was a look that I haven't really seen here outside of it being a shtick. It didn't feel like a shtick.
Every city has its peculiarities, but I have not seen the newsy vibe in Philly. I've seen I'm trying to think of when I think of Philly, the skate scene, the crust punk scene, the definitely Broad Street Bullies scene, the blue collar thing. But the newsboy, where were you hanging out? Where did you observe this tribe?
This was kind of Broad Street area. That was mostly where it was, and I'm willing to concede. I think it was a big holiday element to this, where people were out with their families doing holiday
Bundled
things.
up with like their gloves and their newsy hats.
Yes, it was cold, but people were still doing holiday functions. There was a lot of posing for photos in these areas in front of these older buildings.
They weren't like a Phillies logos or Flyers logos on them. They were just like straight up Newsies.
I don't know if they read because I don't. It's like I couldn't tell if they were actually slinging newspapers. Like, here's the Inquirer. Read about Joel Embiid being a bitch. So I wasn't sure what they were actually doing. But this, I would not say this was a dominant look in the Philadelphia region, but just a particular archetype I was unfamiliar with. Maybe it's just holiday cheer.
It sounds like you're trying to slander them. Get to the point. What is happening? What did you observe?
No slander. This was a peculiarity, as you said. A lot of camel coats.
Interesting. All right, let me rephrase the question. Is there something specific about Philadelphia's identity that lends itself to this old-timey behavior?
I think yes. And I think it's probably similar to Boston in that regard, because these are older cities.
The ska capital of the world, sure.
Exactly. There's something to these older buildings and the history of the place that I think has that appeal. And New York doesn't feel like that. You don't walk around New York and it feels old-timey. Philly kind of does.
But New York doesn't have like a colonial history.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
When I think of New York, I think of like Manny Ramirez and bodegas. Like, that's New York. Philly, I could see as more like, what was the big industry of Philly? Was it politics? It was, right? Like Chicago, you got grain. Pittsburgh, you got steel. Philadelphia was legislation.
There's some legislation. You eventually had, I think, I want to say, like, you had oil money there, right? Like,
yeah, but there was no oil, obviously, there. But wealth set up shop in Philly because of the politics that kind of overlaps with oil.
I wonder if DC also has that, because DC is a beautiful city. Slept on as a beautiful city.
I heard it was one of the most expensive cities to live in currently. Maybe the most expensive city in America to live in. It's small, right? Like the District of Columbia is kind of a tight place.
Yeah, I would say so. But
would you, instead of Mexico City, would you vacation in DC instead?
No, I was down there about a year and a half ago. It's fine.
It
does look good.
DC does?
Yeah.
Does
like
it
really
have
old, beautiful buildings? As you said,
right.
Wealth from going back a couple hundred years, and it being this version of America that was supposed to, inspire awe with Europeans. Like, we are just as cultured as you. Look at these huge stone buildings.
Right.
Look how gorgeous they are. We are every bit as elegant as old Europe. So it still has that feel. And yeah, if you looked at downtown New York and you went by like whatever, FiDi or City Hall, you probably get that same kind of vibe. Like, we're trying to build in a Eurocentric style of architecture that rivals what you have in London or Paris. But most of New York City is not like that.
I thought they built all those beautiful buildings downtown in New York City for Law and Order, Chinatown precinct.
The set. It's a Potemkin City Hall.
DB Wong, starring DB Wong. Right.
You peel back the layers like a dumpling.
Yeah. I mean, I have trouble in cities like that, kind of where not only the history, but the utility of it kind of is like a blanket on top of everything. No matter how delicious the hand-pulled noodles are, no matter how awesome the bars are, it's like sort of like when you're in a college town. It's like, I know where I am, and this is for children or young adults. And like in DC or Philadelphia sometimes, or downtown New York, I'm like, there's laws being written here. And it's, to your point, the architecture is supposed to communicate that power to us when we're in there.
I feel like that is kind of at the root of what I'm talking about with the old-timey lads, is that there is this feel. There's snow going across this grand promenade, and there's these old buildings. And it's like, yeah, you put your newsy cap on and your camel jacket.
Mm,
This is what we're doing. We've done this every holiday for the last 200 years.
right. So you take off your Matt Geiger jersey when the leaves start falling, and you put on your gloves and your Philadelphia Flyers newsy, and it kind of conveys the same blue collar message.
You take off the thigh bullies long sleeve.
Right. Philadelphia has one of the best museums in all of America. So shout out to the culture there. I really especially love Chinatown in Philly. I used to hang out a lot with some guys who ran a nonprofit silkscreen skateboard gallery kind of thing called Space 1026. It's still there next to the Textile Museum. I had a couple art shows there. I love that part of town. It's right near the Reading Terminal, I believe. And so awesome. But I did not stray far from there because the bus would just drop us off and a block away. So I remember going into Chinatown. The median Chinatown quality of food is well below New York City. But to be fair to Philly, didn't have the privilege of visiting their police station there.
Yeah, that's where you get all the good leads.
That's where the dumplings are getting made. That's where the aunties are slanging those pork and chives.
So I spent a lot of time in South Philly and got some good recommendations on bars.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a drinking culture there that is, I would say, a little bit older than New York City in some ways, more localized, and I thought pretty fun. Like, okay, this is a spot that's, beneath a sporting goods store, and they're going late in there. Like, it's a little weird, but they're going late. Or this is this other bar that, yeah, they're going to look at you a little funny if you walk in there by yourself, but it's pretty chill.
Yeah.
Like, very colloquial, which I think is great. And, New York doesn't have as many of those great bars anymore because real estate's expensive, and those bars.
MAGA has won New York City. Yeah. Yeah. In the early aughts, there was a famous style section piece that declared New York City as the new Brooklyn. A decade plus later.
Wait, Philly is the new Brooklyn.
Oh yeah, my bad, Matt. Philly is the new
sixth
Brooklyn.
Borough.
Yeah, because the trains were getting better and faster, and the rent was cheaper, and there was a community of people doing what they did in Williamsburg. Do you see any relics or evidence of that happening?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking about that. Like, where are the plastic little guys? Where are the remnants of, Hollertronics other than Diplo? There was absolutely.
That scene was fucking amazing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like Dave P and all those guys. I mean, maybe he's still there, but there was.
And Rod Lee would come up. Yeah, phenomenal scene.
Yeah, great music city. That was probably. And if you look at that same period of time when we were getting like Spank Rock, Amanda Blank, all those groups,
the homies, for sure.
You also had State Property with Jay-Z and Freeway and Beans and PD Crack. And like there was like a Philly music movement. And that was coming off of, the Roots still being prominent in the early 2000s and their whole scene. So yeah, that was really when the Philly music culture was permeating New York on like multiple different levels, on some hipster cool guy shit, on some mainstream rap stuff, and on some indie rap stuff.
I see where you're going with this. Philly didn't become an extension of Brooklyn. Brooklyn became an extension of Philly. Everyone came up.
There it is.
Because all these amazing musicians you mentioned, I hung out with them in the Lower East Side in Brooklyn, and a lot of them just moved here, and some of them kept on making music and some didn't. God, that is such like a crystallized moment in time. The look, the feel, the fashion, the sounds, completely bookmarked. It feels dated and weird and bad and cringe, like a real cultural moment should. It doesn't bleed out anywhere. It's just like, whoa, either that makes you kind of embarrassed or nostalgic, but it is a distinct feeling.
So on that topic, I was thinking about this exact idea. Was that in that era, let's say 2000 to say 2008, 2009, whatever, there was kind of a uniform that you could identify people who were of a certain group by. And that didn't matter if you were in New York or Philly or you went to Buenos Aires like I did. You look over here like, okay, I know who these people are. And it was like, okay, you're wearing your, you know, your cheap Monday jeans. You know, you're wearing your like deep V from American Apparel. You're wearing Chucks. We know the music you're going to be playing. That uniform, maybe it was because of social media, the very beginnings of it. You know, you had MySpace, you had Facebook starting to become popular.
Media fire.
But was that the last time there was kind of a uniform that was vague enough that it felt as if there was a mass movement?
Well, like the Shein cheap or fast fashion stuff has put everyone in like Hokas and track pants and Champion sweatshirts and all that stuff. And that it's hard to talk about this without talking about real estate and what New York City has turned into, and the places where this might happen. Shout out to Chat Square, are kind of disappearing or constrained right now. You know, they're surrounded by illegal Chinese police precincts, but I can tell kind of like a cookies adjacent person when I see one at MSG. There will be and I'm not talking just wearing our latest and greatest New York Knicks t-shirt, but when I'm in a room full of like-minded people, say at the Garden, you can kind of tell when someone's just like, I also like bullshit like going out and drinking and TV shows, you know. We sort of touched on this last episode. It's like, is this the revenge of the normie? Or have I just become the normie?
There's also this balkanization even within like this subset, right? You'd say, like, okay, this is younger people. And like, okay, well, now you've got like the ALD people over here, and you've got, say, your goths over here, and you've got your fashion gays over here. And like, there's all these little segmentations that weren't there at that point. It was just this sort of uniform where, I mean, I remember this specifically going to, say, like Buenos Aires. You walk into some place like, I don't know about that. You walk into another one. Oh, tight jeans, Chucks, V-necks. They're playing MGMT. I already know. I got it. Lock it in. It was every city on the planet. And this was, of course, Fader and Vice, and they captured this Tokyon. But I don't know if that exists anymore. I think there is a look that's Bushwick, but I don't know that you go to somewhere else and you see that look and you're like, oh, this is a Bushwick person look here, or this is a goth thing that means there's a goth community here. I don't know.
And it has been flattened. If time and culture is a flat circle, then fashion is shoveled onto that pizza pie. And it's interesting that you mention magazines like, Nylon had its own thing, and influence is one thing. And those magazines, the Fader doesn't really quite do fashion as it once did. Tokyon is done. Nylon is, I think, still alive. Index is done. And what we have left is kind of like GQ. Shout out to the homies at GQ. But they have to appeal to an audience that is not us. So their task is different, right? And without critics and writers and people who think about these cultural things like movies and art and fashion and music, those voices kind of being trampled on social media result in this kind of phenomenon, right? Where subcultures cannot evolve and become their own thing. They're just immediately shifted by skepticism, by fatigue, and all these things. So, like, when's the last time we had a great downtown thought piece? It's like it's just getting squashed immediately. I do think we're living in the greatest like cultural time ever, but it no longer exists like it did, as you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that monoculture amongst young people who identify as like trying to be more avant-garde is a good thing or a bad thing, because you know, looking at it and saying, well, having a group of people who's all right, they're ricked out. That's their style. They're all ricked out. These are vintage beasts. These are that like cool. So, break it down, but it does make it feel as if there isn't a unifying youth movement for sure, because that was one of those things about that homogeneity, was that you go to another country and everyone looked that way and like, okay, this is a thing. You go back to New York, you go to Brooklyn, you go to a rooftop, everyone was dressing the same way. You go to Lower Manhattan, everyone was dressing the same way. So it felt as if there was this undercurrent of something substantial. Not that it wasn't anything more than superficial, but it felt as if this was a connected universal group. Not sure you get that today.
I mean,
not sure it was real.
I agree.
It was just a feeling.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, and I have obviously aged out of participating in that, but you know, I do a lot of sourcing of like studio work with young people who screen print, who fabricate books and all that stuff, and they are in their early 20s and live in Ridgewood and Bushwick and sometimes Bed-Stuy, and they have a look. And when I walk into their studio, I'm like, I'm not holding my end of the bargain up. Like, I just look like I'm a sweatshirt wearing dad, you know, which I am. But then I'm like, I have to act my age too, because I am not one of these young people. And this yesterday, I think I like tweeted something poorly worded that I was making fun of someone making fun of a New Yorker, and facetiously I was just like, Ridgewood is not even a part of. We don't consider Ridgewood a part of New York, and
It's
Ridgewood,
in Queens.
Ridgewood Twitter got on my ass. They got my ass.
Man.
They were just like, "You're not a real New Yorker. You're scared of black people. You're scared of kids." And I'm like, I am none of these things, but you're calling me out, and not totally wrong. But also, like, I was trying to make a poorly worded joke, and like, when I go into Ridgewood, that's not my neighborhood anymore. Like, is it the old heads we were hanging out with on Ludlow Street back in the day?
Look, your allies in Ridgewood are the Albanians, the Serbs. You know, you find those
locals only, day ones only, right?
Yeah, I don't know where you fall on the Serbian versus Albanian beef.
I love Nikola Jokic.
Okay, you're on the Serbian side. Stay on that. Stay on that side.
Knicks, bring Rokas over. Yeah. Jokic season. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a story for the Times about Ridgewood, I don't know, 8 years ago or so. And I was very careful to not declare that it was cool. And I don't mean that in the sense of me being the arbiter of whether this neighborhood is cool, but I didn't want that to be the basis of the piece, because I know how people get weirded out by that. Oh, you're saying this is cool now? Okay. Nah.
You can't do that in the paper. Yeah.
I didn't say that. I'm just talking about some of the newer things that are opening up, talking about the history of it, and how there's this sort of break between the, how would you call it, the more industrial side that, you know, it abuts against Bushwick, and then you have the side that's more residential, that's up on the hill, that is more the jurisdiction of those older groups that we were referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter. The New York Times wrote the headline, "A Slice of Brooklyn and Queens," which made people go fucking ballistic.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, you know, Ben, you know, you're not welcome out here anymore. Like went to the coffee shop and like, it's like, fuck Ben Dietrich out there. I'm like, all right.
Well, this is Bourdain's whole shtick before he died, right? Like, he's like, this is my favorite place. And then as soon as you see this, it'll not be my favorite place anymore. But I have to do it because business is good for them, etc. Like, do you think Ridgewood in 2024 could support their own NBA team? Maybe. Like,
I don't know.
let's get soccer about this. Like, Ridgewood should have a team. Chinatown should have a team. Barclays, MSG.
I mean, I feel like you can't have too many Serbs on the Ridgewood team because that would offend the Albanian, Armenian fan base out there. But you need that Slavic core.
Slava Medvedenko. Just everyone with that name. Being territorial about New York City is just a rite of passage. I'm just so out of touch that I'm like, I remember when I used to feel that. If you used to feel good, where I was like, I was joking, like, after all this Luigi talk that's transforming through last week's segment, it's like, maybe it is time to bring back the Defend Brooklyn AK-47 Brooklyn Industries tee, because that is the vibe I'm getting from many people now.
Well, I think the cure for this is that once you move a couple times in New York, it's really hard to take that side. Even if you stay in the same neighborhood, like a few times through the ringer, getting a broker, paying your fees, moving, you're like, all right, what are we doing here? Hard to defend an area. If you grew up there, I get it. You grew up there, sure. Or moved there 20 years ago. But other than that, if you move a couple of times in New York, it's very tough to, Christopher Columbus a neighborhood. I mean, look, white people do it for sure.
Everyone, yeah.
I'm saying, okay, I'm moving into Crown Heights. I've been here 2 years. Like, I'm different than these other folks who are coming in. It's like, well, you got there a little earlier.
I mean, it's confusing when the street names are all Dutch. Yeah, it is a whatever. The city is constantly turning over, man. And but I love it. I love people who get angry about stuff because that is the spice of New York life. And like people getting angry on our behalf, I think, is the unifying element that brings together all these disparate communities, these Serbian communities and these Chinese communities. Did you see the crazy story that someone lit another human being on fire on the F train?
Yeah. In the footage, the story is crazy, but the video footage is like
confusing,
beyond disturbing also. But in many ways, not only is there a person engulfed in flames, which, and I'm not saying this to be callous at all, we have seen a lot over the last 450 days or whatever. We've seen a lot of carnage
20 years.
Come across our feed.
9/11.
I'm just saying specifically, we saw people in a refugee camp lit on fire very similarly.
About the Sudan. Yeah.
Oh, I'm saying in Palestine.
No, I know,
like a month,
but
I'm saying a month ago, right? Like or the American guy, who lit himself on fire. We've seen footage of people afire more than we really need to as human beings over like the last few months. What made that one?
Decades. Right.
Going back to Vietnam, but overall,
Ukraine was crazy, right? Like watching those drones blow people up. We saw it on our Twitter feed.
So what I'm saying is not that I'm minimizing the horror of seeing someone on fire. I'm saying that wasn't the unfamiliar part. The part was seeing it on a subway station with, I guess, the alleged murderer sitting on a bench watching this happen, and then a cop, I don't know if he's from the Chinatown secret precinct or what.
A Serbian, right.
But he walks right by while she's standing up, the victim, fully ablaze, walking. And the cop just strolls on by and basically doesn't look at her. It's a really bizarre, disturbing video.
And the video's a poor angle, poor quality. It's a surveillance camera. But
No, this was definitely someone's phone
okay, this is a different one.
because you could hear them talking
Right.
and being like, oh shit, or something like that. This
Yeah.
one. Yeah, anyway.
And like this is not a show or entertainment. And you know, I don't think we turn everything into entertainment. And entertainment's a weird, nebulous concept, but it should not strike us as anything except surreal, right? There shouldn't be someone crying. There shouldn't be someone running. Life is extremely scary and strange at times. And there was immediate Twitter's an awful place, but there was immediate MAGA opportunities to talk about New York City as an unsafe place, as a place where progressives have ruined and maybe commands too much attention in the American narrative. And very much like debates about NBA viewership, the safety of New Yorkers is a way just to say, make America great again. And it was strange, right? Because I don't want to make it a habit of like defending New Yorkers because like I don't like everybody. I like the city quite a bit, but there's a difference between something that's horrifying and anecdotal and horrifying in a trend, right? And when we see another human being ablaze on a train that we have just taken, I'm like, that is surreal, that is horrifying, that is scary, and also anecdotal.
Fully agree. And even going back to the other point you made about the repetition of every part of this. Not to say that this isn't particularly shocking, but the repetition. Something happens on a subway. Therefore, New York City is a hellhole. Therefore, it's the fault of Democrats. Therefore, Democrats start freaking out about it's just the same routine, and everyone knows their role. And then we get on a podcast and talk about how they're all a bunch of idiots, and New York is like statistically really safe with some horrible aberrations every now and then. And like, man, we're all just cogs in a machine here, Andrew.
Where are my liquid sky pants and triple extra large rave tees? Yeah, it is tradition, like sports debate. It is WFAN over and over. And it's like a trap that I fall for because I'm like, New York is a very livable city. But, you know, if you're scared of things that happen here, just don't come here. As I'm trying to take my family to see the Rockefeller tree, and I cannot, or comfortably, because there's too many visitors from Queens and out of town that it's just like the safety is just too appealing. Everyone's just like having their salad dressing martinis and looking at these wonderful Christmas lights. It is a very usable city that strange and surreal things happen in.
I'm brought here by a snakehead in Chinatown. I'm listening to some Slavcore music in my headphones.
What does that sound like?
A lot of drums.
Jokic just dancing with horses.
But I agree with you. I don't believe that anyone genuinely thinks New York is dangerous. It's just everyone playing a role. And it's the same way, not to talk about hoops yet, but when you go on to Instagram and it's like, oh, here come the travel comments, and it's just every single one's about the travel. Here's why I don't watch basketball anymore. It's like the exact same arguments that we've heard for years and years, and everyone just says the same argument and says the same comments, and it's been going on for ages. Like, that's a travel. That's why I don't watch basketball. Everyone's soft today. That's the new NBA. That's the blue city. Welcome to de Blasio's New York.
San Francisco. Yeah. And to be fair, sometimes taking 3 bad threes in a row sucks. Sometimes something awful happening to someone on the F train is genuinely awful and disturbing.
Of course.
And also the overall thing chugs along, right? Like time is undefeated in terms of the subway, New York City and basketball.
If there's something that social media has rewarded, it is that kind of reptilian brain where it allows people the joy of feeling validated all the time. Where, oh, I hear about every single crime in New York City. What gives me joy is calling New York City a hellhole and saying, this is what happens when Democrats run a state. And I just sit there waiting for the New York Post to give me that jab. Here we go. Subway crime. That's right. Oh, we got illegal immigrants. Did what now? All right, here I go. I'm just waiting for that blast of serotonin or whatever the fuck it is to get people excited. And
yeah.
social media allows you to do that. It gives you an algorithm that is cultivated and tailored to exactly providing that kind of hit.
Yeah, it's like, we joke about it sometimes, and it happened in the .com biz where you come up with the idea and you reverse engineer the content. So like, oh, no one has done pets.com. All right, I don't care about dogs, but all right, I have that address, and then I'm going to start a company that sends kibble out. And sometimes I think in the state of my beautiful Twitter feed that's no longer, I have these voices who are like, I just want to say, make it make sense about something, and then I'll just put something in front of it. I want to say, I want to call LeBron a fan of bronsexual, and I'll just find a clip that supports that. And I'm like, it's like the dead take era on my social media feed. It's like, you guys are going through the motions, but there's no movement. There's no evolution. It's just like, you just want to call someone a bronsexual.
But Andrew, in non-sexual news, have you checked out the NBA.com? They have a new ranking for dunks. It's not sexual at all.
Yeah.
Has things like, new metrics that we haven't seen before that are about jams.
Well, it is the most emasculating thing to get dunked on, right? People find it to be uncouth of a proud man to defend a dunk attempt and to fail. That is like the ultimate humiliation, right?
Yeah, but fortunately, some of their metrics on there, reach back, for example.
This is on NBA.com, sanctioned by Silver himself.
Tip, height, hang, not sexual at all. Nothing like that.
If your mind is in the gutter, watching Mike Breen call a national game is hilarious. Every other term or call is an innuendo. It's fantastic. You can make a drinking game out of that with a salad martini.
The biggest hang this year, according to NBA's dunk metrics, is Keldon Johnson with a 0.7. Like, huh. Now, tip on that one, no. Yep. That was no tip on that one. This says, according to the height, 10.7. Wow.
That's vertical.
Girth 4.2. Flaccid swing, 3.7. Power, 9.5. Wow. This is really informative stuff.
The MITO, is that high? The motion in the ocean?
Low, surprisingly low on this one.
Weird, oddly low for Keldon.
Weird.
Could really bring that up. Maybe he just doesn't want it enough.
So do we believe in these dunk metrics?
Why not? Right? Like, we have to quantify everything somehow. And maybe there is a different motion in Vince Carter's ocean than Anthony Davis, who just lays the ball in.
So they're compiling scores. I don't know what the highest would be, but right, there's a bunch of different metrics that they power style. I don't know how they
I have a stupid question.
Style, jump.
Is verticality high? Like, Wembanyama has an unfair advantage. We're talking about feet off the ground or height of the ball or hand.
Well, I can't tell what is decided by a human or which is all just tracking cameras, because vertical, hang time, distance, that is obviously all
I swear the
calculated
fish was this big, man. It was the biggest fish I've ever seen, but I had to let it go.
style. I'm not sure how you necessarily sort that out. There's a
Oh,
defensive contest sub score on this as well. Anyway, they're saying the best jam of the year occurred on November 4th. It was John Collins.
he can
That's a
get
number
up,
one.
man. He can get up.
One thing that was cool on this, not to say I spent a lot of time about the dongs of the NBA, but
Luke Dongley.
I thought the height of the ball or the vertical was cool because Shaden Sharp had all three.
Oh, I
cool.
remember that Shaden Sharp dunk. It looked like his shoulders were down above the rim before he dunked it from the baseline. Like his shoulders were like right at the rim. It was insane. That dude can hop out of the gym. It's crazy.
Yeah. So in terms of just vertical, he's got the three highest in the league this year: 45 inches, 43, almost 44, 40. Two of them were alley oops. One was a tip in. Again, it all gets a little sexual there, but I mean that's kind of cool. I wish I knew that as a kid. Like, oh, Shaden Sharp, highest vertical in the league. There it is. That's irrefutable proof that this guy's doing the most high-flying jams in the business.
Now, if you were a gambler or a general manager, would you account for these statistics in either signing a player or betting on them? Being like, well, Shaden Sharp can jump crazy. He is Space Jam. We got to give this guy a bigger contract, or I got to bet he jams 5 times this game.
Yeah, I don't really know what use this stuff has other than that, like, wow, this guy can jump out of the gym.
Yeah. I mean, there was no sin bin. There was a story out in the NFL where the owner of the Jets, Woody Johnson, was using his teenage son's like Madden rating to like evaluate players. And he nixed the trade for Jerry Jeudy because he wasn't ranked well in this video game. And people were mad at that, but I was not. I was like, that's amazing because Jerry Judy's kind of not a great player. He's very good, whatever. The Madden rating was kind of more information that you use to inform yourself of a transaction. So I want to know everyone's girth.
I mean, your boy Vlade famously didn't draft Luka because he didn't like his dad.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
People will come up with whatever dumb reason they want.
Right. I mean, it's funny we mentioned Shaden Sharp and John Collins and Keldon Johnson. 3 players that could easily be gettable in a trade. I don't think anyone's claiming these guys are better than top 50, 60, 75, 100. Even John Collins statistically can get up to like a top 30 player, but we all know what he is. Watch out on a breakaway dunk, but I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, but sometimes I'm like, do they rotate well? Do they switch well? Why do I always say that? Why is that the answer to everything? But I know John Collins kind of loses the plot sometimes.
Well, John Collins is funny because great dunker, who was also on the receiving end of probably the most famous dunk from last year, which was that was Ja, right? No, it was Anthony Edwards. Like vicious posterization of a
Was it? Yeah. He's incredible. He was in the slam dunk competition. He had the Red Baron goggles on, which I heard they're wearing in Philly now.
He had that dunk over Joel Embiid that he put on a t-shirt and wore. Yeah, he's
insane.
jumping out of the gym.
He's insane. And you can get him for a late first rounder right now.
Probably so. I mean, he's got one more year on that contract, but he controls it, so he could opt in or out. So Utah is definitely probably prefers to trade him.
Oh, they're shopping him. And as a fan of dunking and bigs, I would not trade for John Collins. I just don't love him as a player like Michael Porter Jr. And I know you're loath to talk about trade talk, but I love it.
I kind of like Collins. I think you can play him with the 5, you can play him with the 4. He can shoot enough to space the court, block shots. I'm a fan.
All those things are true, but his teammates seldom like him. And I think the friendship metric is more relevant than ever in the NBA. Teammates don't seem to like him that much, and coaches don't seem to like him that much. and teams tend to want to deal him. I don't like any of that.
He does have kind of a dickish face.
He's got a dickish dunk. Is that a stat?
Well, it's all
Dickishness.
dickish.
Yeah, it's all dickishness.
The whole thing is just nothing but dongs from front to back.
It's advanced schlongage, right? But I always feel like my mind is elsewhere. But no sin bin Juan Soto, the best hitter we've ever seen, but playing on his fourth team at age 26. Like, how come no one wants to keep this guy? How come he doesn't want to stay anywhere? John Collins is one of those guys that I feel like will be available constantly throughout his career.
Could be true. Yeah, I like his game. I don't know about the interpersonal dynamics in the locker room, but he does have a dickish face.
That's a dickish face,
that's my
but
stance.
I think we could start talking about dickish faces because as we're finding out in Minnesota, chemistry is like a huge part of the equation of winning, and not only within the team and within the front office, it's the team, the organization, and the fans, right? It all kind of has to happen in unison. And if the fans turn on a player for whatever reason, that chemistry is not useful. That negative energy is not useful.
You know what's annoying, amongst many other things, is what you said about fans turning on players. And we're getting the fans turning on the same players over and over for the same stupid reasons. And it's really annoying because I want new takes. It's like
we're in the dead take era, man.
Oh my God, we're still talking about Joel Embiid getting hurt. We're still talking about.
Wait, he's lazy though. Lazy.
Oh, he's
Stephen
lazy.
A. Smith told me.
We're talking about Randall. He's not trying out there. It's the same shit.
Ben Simmons, just a loser mentality. Oh, he's playing well now that they're trying to tank. I'm like, he's always been good. He's just hurt.
Westbrook. Now he's trying. He's been toxic, but now he's good. Just. Right.
Anthony Edwards, he's an MVP. I tell you. Where's my newsy cap? Breaking. Anthony Edwards, MVP.
Well, we've done the Randall defense before, and I'll do it again. But we talked about this when he was in New York, and now people are mad at him because he's not that good of a defender. And Minnesota was an elite defensive team last year, and they are not anymore. They are an average defensive team. And the biggest story, as we've talked about before, is that the Minnesota Timberwolves dismantled a contender because they didn't want to pay salary cap taxes or the onerous restrictions of the new collective bargaining agreement. Ironically, they were supposed to help smaller teams, made them blow up a contender, and now they have no chance of winning a title during Anthony Edwards' tenure there, and he's going to leave. Like, they sealed their fate as a franchise by trading Cat. They had a chance to win it this year. Now they don't, and Edwards is going to leave that team.
They traded the wrong one. They have an Anthony Edwards problem, man. The game everyone is dogging Randall for against the Warriors, where he shouldn't even been on the perimeter guarding Steph Curry alone. Anthony Edwards shot 19 shots for 20 points, or maybe 20 shots for 19 points. Anthony Edwards has not been as good as Cat has ever been. No. And they should have traded Edwards and kept Cat.
To me, they should have just not traded anybody.
They wanted to keep Naz Reid, right? Like, they wanted to pay Naz Reid eventually, who is not even as good as Julius Randle.
No, I just mean they could have done all these things, and they could have paid them the onerous cap restrictions things.
Well, remember,
they could have just paid it,
In this, sorry to interrupt, in this specific case, there is a transfer of ownership that is very mucky, and it is uncertain. And A-Rod sitting there, and we're not sure who owns the team at this point or who was allowed to buy what. So there's an ownership issue in the front office that sadly is affecting the championship quality team we saw as recently as last year.
Right. I'm just saying, to emphasize, had a contender, would have been a contender this year as well. They kept it intact. They didn't. They are no longer a contender, and Anthony Edwards is not going to spend his career in Minnesota as a result of this.
And he's talking shit.
Whether or not this is a good or bad thing, They are just not going to be able to replace someone of Cat's caliber in any way, shape, or form. Randall isn't good enough. They look exactly like what happens if you take away a superstar offensive player who also is one of the leading rebounders in the NBA and blocks some shots, and you replace him with a guy who is a few tiers down. That's what this team looks like. So just speaking on Randall specifically, in the same way that Knicks fans turned on him and said, oh, he's not trying out there. There was this video that was going viral of Randall against the Warriors. And I watched it and I said, there is no evidence of a dearth of effort in any one of these clips. It's all him just not knowing where to go. Like one of them, it's like, here's a screen and roll. And he clearly thinks that DiVincenzo is going to not
zig
allow
when he should zag, right?
The guard to reject the screen. So he's waiting on the other side of it. DiVincenzo gets faked out. The ball handler, I can't remember if it's Curry or whoever it is. Oh, it's Healed, actually. Like, instead of taking the screen, goes the other direction. So Randall's left flat-footed, leaning the wrong way, tries to close out, doesn't even get a hand up. You're like, look at this lazy bum. Like, that wasn't even his fault. But more to the point, he is just a little bit slow in terms of figuring out where to go. And in the same way that someone like LeBron is ahead of the curve, someone who sees a play developing and gets there early, he's the opposite. This is a spectrum. We've talked about that before. Very hard to be a guard who has those issues because the threshold to get in the NBA is so high for guards. But if you're a 6'8", 6'9" guy like Randall who can really score, who's a great athlete, who's strong, who's fast, has all these other attributes, it's kind of a testament to how good he is at basketball and how rare his other skill sets are for someone of his size and strength, that he can be in the NBA and be an all NBA player twice over, but clearly does not process the game at a above average speed.
And this idea is sprinkled throughout The Joy of Basketball, the only book you should read. Randall is an average basketball processing player. The ones that are really good at it, we should celebrate. We shouldn't like constantly knock down players that are just of average processing speed. Brunson is kind of average. He's not as quick as someone like Ben Simmons. This is why we love Ben Simmons so much. Or Chris Paul, LeBron James. Players who can anticipate actions and their opponent's movements are incredible, right? I understand why Mikal Bridges cost that much. The story, Villanova, his friends. But also he's one of those quick processors. And if he's not hitting a shot, that's fine. It's starting to fall now. But his processing of switching and rotations will always make him valuable.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at a comparison between, say, Tyrese Maxey and Emmanuel Quickley. Tyrese Maxey may be better at basketball than
For
Quickley.
sure. Yeah.
But Quickley has a better processing speed. He's a much better defender. He's great at closing out. He sees the play unfolding. He's a better passer. These are just attributes that players have. And it doesn't mean that you're better or worse. It means that you have these certain skills. Like a lot of the stuff that Randall is able to do, other guys can't. Other guys can't just put up 26 and 10
Yeah.
and be the fulcrum of an offense. They just can't do it.
It's like, Randall, Kyle, can you score us 26? Like, yeah, that's hard to do.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Like Kyle Anderson, can you do that? No. But I know where to be because that's what I'm good at. And again,
Jaden McDaniels, can you do that? No.
You see this diversity within big guys just far more than guards because the scarcity of guys, of men who are 6'9" who can play basketball allows you to have various attributes. So in some ways, yeah, power forward is kind of the most interesting position where you have all these different style of players. Most guards at this point are kind of the same. All right, you're a combo guard. You can play on the ball, you can play off the ball, you can shoot, you can run the pick and roll. You're all kind of the same. What's really the difference between, Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland? Like, I don't know, man. They're all the same. They're all 6'3". They're all 6'2". But forward, back to Randall, when you see someone who is slow a foot, it's noticeable. And Randall is noticeably not good at being in the right place. And this was the same thing that happened with our guy Tobias Harris when he was on Philly. I was saying for years, like, this guy's just not processing at the right speed. There's nothing he can do about this. And late, when people really soured on Tobias, they started calling him lazy. Look at him. Look at him. He won't close out. I'm like, man, these guys are trying hard. They are just a little bit slow at picking up where they're supposed to be on both sides of the ball. And it is, again, a testament to them being big, athletic, skilled 3-level scorers, all this kind of stuff that allows them to be good NBA players. But they still aren't seeing the game at the same speed as whatever, a LeBron.
It's funny when people mention Jason Kidd, and especially in terms of framing of LeBron. It's like, oh, he's turning into Jason Kidd. And I'm like, well, that dovetails into a truth that I enjoy, because as they get older, their main attribute is seeing space and seeing the clock and seeing their teammates, because they're so good at it. But I feel like what people mean is like, he's just shooting threes now. I'm like, sure. But like, Jason Kidd was a wonderful player who transformed his game halfway through his career, but could always run a fast break. I'm not talking about some magic of like seeing 420th dimensional chess. He can run a fast break good. It's just like, you see it when you see it. When Ben Simmons pushes the ball up, like, right, they're caught off guard, there's a layup.
Draymond, it doesn't matter how old and decrepit he gets, he can still grab and go a rebound. Get it? He's off to the races. Player. He's looking for Steph, filling, the trailer lanes. He's going to go to the basket until the help comes there. He's going to kick it out to the corner. Dre has that ability, and it doesn't go away. You just get older and slower and sloppier, so you end up turning the ball over more than you might. But those are built-in abilities that also you can't really develop. You can learn to read the game better, but if you don't have an intuitive understanding of motion, you have to succeed in the way that the Celtics do.
Yeah.
You have to build a system where guys can make simpler reads, where guys know where the defense is coming from, instead of having Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler chomping at your heels and slapping at the ball and putting you into a chaotic situation.
Yeah, I think most coaching is, the coaching debate is its own thing, but Randall should not be let out to dry, hung to dry on the perimeter, choosing between 3-point shooters to defend in less than a second. Like, if that happens more than once, something has gone wrong. Like, you need to make an adjustment. That should be DiVincenzo. That should be someone more fleet of foot on the perimeter to shadow the greatest shooter of all time, Steph Curry. Is Minnesota disappointing? Totally. Julius Randle, we always say on this pod, he makes accepted as much money as Jaden McDaniels. He knows who he is. If you need him to drop 30 points and play amazing defense, then the team is built incorrectly.
I'm just sick of the same villains and the same moralizing. We just need new takes. It's like, oh, it's Randall. This again, his body language. Oh, yeah, he's lazy. I'm like, dude, we just did this for 4 years. Come on. We're just doing this in Minnesota now?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about that in terms of the dumb ratings debate that's happening now and why people are quote unquote not watching. People are watching. They're on streaming sites. NBA is more popular than ever. People just want to say make America great again in different ways. But some of the criticism is that there is no player to pick up the mantle from LeBron James, from the era that we loved during the Heatles. And I'm like, I'm ready for Wemby to take center stage because he is having an awesome season and he is exactly who the NBA needs to pick up where LeBron sadly has left off.
I fully agree, but can we just talk about the grousing season of discontent for a second before we talk about me?
Let's do it.
Only because to the point that we've been making, the songs that people sing, and how much social media is now really impacting this in my belief. I've had multiple IRL conversations with people who are clearly alluding to like the Instagram video that went viral of Kobe saying today's offenses aren't complex. It's just like one guy going ISO. It's just not true.
Yeah.
But I've
Rest
heard
in peace. But get out of here. Yeah.
But like multiple people have been like, well, in today's offenses, I'm like, wait. I know you got that. I saw that same Kobe video. Like, this isn't your idea. This isn't true. There's nothing valid about this argument at all. But I'm hearing like 3 different people say it because you saw this on Instagram. And this has happened with a couple other subjects, along with the too many threes thing. There's like the sub arguments to that everyone is just also now using because they heard someone else say it. I'm like, come on,
sure.
Give me the new takes. Give me something weirder, something funnier. So, Andrew, with that in mind, I want to give you a couple stats, and I want you to try to speculate on some trends in the NBA that may not have been identified yet, that may be bubbling under the surface. And as the world's most influential basketball podcast, it is our duty. We are duty bound to try to identify those and tell people about them before other people do.
Please let this be thrust rating.
This is what I'm saying, right? So while everyone's here complaining about the 3-ball, you're complaining about some shit that already happened, man. You're talking about the past. You're talking about the last 15 years and you're griping about it. I'm talking about what's happening in the NBA right now. And
I'm in my liquid sky. Let's go.
That's why this is Cookie Soup, Andrew. So a couple things. And I think this is real. But the only caveat is let's not try to say, well, OKC is an outlier and that's pushing the numbers in one way. Or Joel Embiid is hurt and that's made the NBA or the Sixers offense capsize. Let's just keep this generalized trends in the league, right? Not how these numbers could have been shaped by individual outliers, because they always exist. Year by year, you're going to have your aberrations or
you've had anecdotal examples for sure.
You get it. You get it.
Let's go. I've ridden the subway. Let's go.
Okay, you've ridden the subway. So, offensive rating across the league down by 2 points this year. That's not insubstantial. 2 points down. Offensive rating. 2 points down. Blocks up. Steals up. Deflections up. Turnovers up. Let's just deal with those first. We got offense, field goal percentage down. Effective field goal percentage down. 3-point percentage down. All these defensive stats up. Offense down. And yet, all we're hearing about is the threes, the offense. No one plays defense anymore. Au contraire.
Mon frere. Yeah. And, I was thinking about this kind of in a roundabout way because I don't think there's any dumb corporation anymore. I think stats, we used to debate if they were useful. They just turned into part of our jobs, our hobbies, our lives. And teams started prioritizing a certain kind of player, right? Certain kind of players are very sought after and expensive. If the Pelicans ever want to deal Herb Jones or Trey Murphy, they will have buyers. Oh, Michael Porter Jr.? Maybe not, right? And that's a whole cultural NBA shift from a decade ago. So there's a lot of moving parts to what you're discussing, which is fascinating. But to me, it is a pendulum swing where in order to be a competitive team, you have to defend valuable shots. And there's certain players that can do that, and teams are seeking them out. Caruso just got a 4-year extension.
Right. And I fully agree. And I think this is a case of NBA teams who obviously have gotten smarter, adapting to the trends that have occurred over the last few years, while the discourse in the public is still talking about some old shit.
Yep.
If you look around the league, the kind of players who are valued now, look, we talked about this in the book. This is the end of the unitasker as a shooter. They're gone. There are no Reddicks in the league anymore. There's a couple floating around still, maybe a Duncan Robinson here or there. There's a couple, but those guys aren't even small.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few. You look at the guys who are coming into the league, young guys on teams that emphasize defense, whether we're talking about Cason Edwards or Cason Wallace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Casey Wallace.
Cason Wallace. We're talking about your boy Dyson Daniels. We're talking about Tari Eason, the Thompson brothers. This is what the NBA is doing. They are going out and saying, we actually don't care as much whether you're a bad shooter to start with. We're going to hopefully develop you into a reliable shooter, but we need defensive wolves on the court. We just can't survive in the NBA in 2024 without them. So there's a trend towards height, towards wingspan, towards girthy jams, but you are seeing the arrival of NBA defenses that are developed to defend against the trends of the last few years, and no one's talking about it.
Right. I mean, we mentioned this in our season preview with the Sacramento Kings, right? It's like, adding DeMar DeRozan seems like a sugar rush, but like you have a defensive issue on that team. Like you already have bucket guys, Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. Adding another version of that at small forward is going to fuck up your whole season. And now they're talking about dealing De'Aaron Fox. I'm like, and then you lose the best player of your last 10 years. This is what happens, right? There's consequences to just eating, to wearing that M&M's leather, that Juji Fruits jacket on the F train, because they didn't prioritize the player you're talking about. And in order to keep up with the trends of the league, you have to pay attention to the league. And I love zaggers when people zig, but like try to zag in a place that makes a team better and not worse.
I mean, a good example of this is the Hawks, where they
love that team.
Decided, hey, we need to have a bunch of rangy athletes and guys who can defend the paint and run the court, and we're going to build around Trey.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we're bringing in Dyson Daniels, and we've got
Jalen
a couple
Johnson,
young guys who are developing. We're going to draft a large Frenchman who can fly around the court. Like, let's see what happens. And I just think, that's the model.
Yeah, respect to Ridgewood, but they looked at Bogdan Bogdanovic and being like, this might be an old-fashioned idea, this sharpshooter off the bench. And he's kind of been suppressed in his role as opposed, and they're a better team. It doesn't take much, right? And the Knicks knew this. They paid too much for Mikal Bridges. Also, they got Mikal Bridges. And Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart, you can't have everything in the NBA with the cap. If you get two of these perimeter demons, you're cooking.
Yeah, I just think so much attention, being paid to threes, while there's clearly another trend underway here. I mean, this is another trend, and I want to talk about a little bit. 3-point shooting down by accuracy. It's like 36%, same as it was a few years ago. But teams are taking a couple more per 100 possessions. So more threes are still being taken, which is like the little bit of truthful grist that's in there with these complaints. Threes are still going up.
Truthful girth.
And they're truthful girth. And the accuracy is going down, which is weird because that would also make it like less fun to watch. Like I'm saying, if we're going for truthful girth, right? So taking more, but they're making a slightly lower percentage. This would not be something noticeable by the average person in a game because it's...
Or myself. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
well, how would you notice two more threes per game and they're shooting them at like 1 or 2.5% less? You couldn't, but this is a league-wide trend.
Yeah.
I want to take this back to what we were just talking about and say that I wish people were looking at some of these 3-point trends with a little more of a microscope, because the fact that teams are taking more threes is also a testament in reality to better defense. People only think of more threes as the context of unbridled offense and teams racing around and chucking. It's like, who gives up the second most 3-point attempts in the NBA?
The
The
best
Oklahoma City Thunder,
Right.
who have one of the best defenses of all time. Why? Because that's all they give you.
This was the Budenholzer Bucks thing.
Except teams are only shooting 32% against them because they're on you.
Yeah.
The
Or
Bucks
they're
version,
they're selecting the player to take this shot.
right? But the Bucks version was like a math gimmick, which was
Right.
like, we're going to protect the rim and give you those shots. OKC is, we're giving you nothing anywhere, and you're just going to end up holding the ball with 2 seconds left in the shot clock and be like, fuck it, Kobe, and you're just going to have to throw some bullshit up. Also, they do the selective shooting thing, as you said.
Yeah. A quick aside, but I love the Thunder. I think Jalen Johnson as a top 10 NBA player. Is that a bad take? He can play center, power forward, shooting guard.
I don't
Point
know if he's
guard.
top 10, but I respect this take. This is what I mean. We need some new takes. This is a new one.
He is a wonderful player, man. And I don't think he gets a lot of shine because he doesn't look like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. He's kind of stocky. He's goofy. He's just absolutely a zoomer. He's funny. He wears funny clothes. He is not your archetypical Space Jam hero. But statistically and eye test wise, I'm like, this dude is better than he's in the 1.1 percentile of the NBA.
Yeah, the Hawks have something brewing there. It's good.
Oh no, the Thunder.
Oh, I thought you were talking about
Jalen Johnson.
You were talking about Jalen Williams.
Jalen Williams. Did I say Jalen Johnson?
Yeah. I thought you were talking about the guy in the
bad.
Hawks.
Oh,
And I was
Jalen
like,
Williams.
I was like, the guy in the Hawks. I'm like,
He's
that's
a top
spicy
20
take.
player.
But I was also here for that as well.
Yeah. Oh no, but he doesn't have the positionality that Jalen Williams does.
No, I think Jalen Williams is fantastic too. Yeah.
I mean, both of them, right, are superstars.
Yeah. I mean,
Stars,
I think,
stars.
I mean, I've watched enough of OKC to realize Hartenstein works really well in that system.
Oh, I miss him so much. He's so good.
That it makes sense. He's great there. He's feisty. He gives them an element of physicality that they didn't have. And then they're going to get Chet back. And like that team is going to be really difficult to beat.
You know
really
how
difficult to beat.
if you can't have it, no one can. I want him to be bad. And then I'll watch those damn games, and I'm like, he's even better than he was as a Knick. I'm like, God, he's an awesome player. And he's not like a top dog by any means, but he touches the ball in most possessions, and it always leads to a nice, valuable shot. I'm just like, he's the type of dude you pay.
I mean, this is also, with Caruso being re-signed to, 4 years, $80 million.
Only playing 20 minutes. Yeah.
Like, that seems like an overpay. It's like, no, you're not seeing this. It's defense.
Yeah.
That's what it is. He is one of the best, if not the best, perimeter defenders in the league. You lock him down, you pay him. OKC is building the best defensive team possible, and they're ahead of the curve in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're doing, because this is the way the league is going, while everyone's over here screaming about no one plays defense anymore.
Yeah. And Caruso is like buying real estate in a place that isn't New York versus buying real estate in New York. If you buy a house outside of New York, you have a Michael Porter Jr. situation where you might not have an easy time selling it. Caruso will always have value in this NBA. You can deal that contract.
Of course. But also, you trade Giddey, who is playing well in Chicago.
I like Giddey.
I like him too. He's a good player.
Yeah.
But you trade him for the kind of guy that you say, okay, we want the best perimeter defender. We're building this thing. Kind of play him a low amount of minutes. See what he does. Give him a 4-year extension. You didn't trade for 1 year of Caruso. You traded for 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that trade now, even though people mocked the Bulls for that trade, I'm like, I get it. You're not a contender. Giddey's young. And again, I'm a fan. I think he's a good player. But now you got 5 years of Caruso out of that.
Yeah.
And no one was able to outbid you for him. No one was able to slide in and say, no, we'll pay him 25. Like that's how you build a team. Identify the guy you want who fits the characteristics that you need. underplay him and then pay him $20 million a year.
They know what they got. And like, I don't want to be Pollyannic and take too much of a worldview, but like, just to offer equal and opposite reaction to the hate the NBA is getting about ratings and threes. This league is tight right now. I love it. All these players are really exciting. Wembanyama, as Celtics Twitter is trying to be like, why isn't Tatum MVP for the 6th year running? It's like, well, he's not as complete. He won the championship with Porzingis, Drew Holiday. Okay. I'm like, it doesn't look good for Tatum Nation because Wembanyama is already in a second year, predictably, probably a top 3 dog, right? Didn't he block 10 shots the other night?
He did. I mean, to me, this whole idea of there are MVP candidates who are legit candidates, then there's the conversation in which we just shout out guys who are having good years or good players on good teams. Like, do we still have to do that whole conversation thing? Because we're not going to mention Donovan Mitchell, best record.
Evan Mobley is my MVP there. Sorry, Mitchell fans, but
this is what I mean, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's dutifully. All right, well, Mobley is in the conversation. Mitchell's in the conversation. What else? Triple J, he's got to be in the conversation because Memphis has a good record.
The MVP is a team award. We should make an MVP for the team. Maybe like have a trophy and name it after someone Irish.
It's like, well, Houston, they've got a really good record, so I guess Şengün is in the conversation.
Şengün is Tatum,
good. They're all good.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is what the Tatum thing always is. Like, they have a really good record, so therefore their best player is in the conversation. Look.
And he's getting better. I got to give him credit. His assist percentage is like creeping up. He's a wonderful player, but not a top 5 player, which is a very high standard, man.
He's having a really good year. He does more things than he used to, but like, he's primarily a scorer, and he's good, and he's very good, but not elite. Like, his true shooting percentage is back around 60%, as it always is. He's not shooting that well from 3. Again, really good player. He's scoring a lot. Rebounds, better passer than he used to be. Solid defender, not spectacular.
Awesome supporting cast. Yes, he's awesome. He's no good. SGA,
but it's
he's
like
no Luka.
No. He just isn't in that same category in terms of his impact. He's very good though. But Wemby, in my opinion, is in that conversation now.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
He is actually in the conversation. I think Jokic, Giannis, SGA, Luka, and Wemby kind of vying on the precipice.
They're the second tier, maybe,
in that conversation. I agree. There's 3, but they're close.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So, I mean, what do you think has propelled Wemby into this role, or has he just been here the whole time?
He's just been here the whole time. I think it takes repetition. It takes familiarity with his teammates. Castle's new. It's a work in progress. So that Keldon Johnson has kind of been relegated to a different role. Vassell is getting healthy. It is not stable yet. If they trade for De'Aaron Fox, I'll be super excited for that. And if they manage to keep Castle in that transaction, but Wemby will always suffer from his true talent, which is his height. He wants to think it's his dog, but his height offers him something unique, unteachable. And I think skeptics will say, well, it's just unfair how good he is, and he's settling for bad shots, and he's actually not a great player. He's just tall. He's an alien, And I'm like, so what? Well, the dude is incredible.
We talked about this last year. I can't remember if it was in our preview or not. I think it was, actually. But we definitely discussed this, that the Spurs had some sneaky, really good lineups last year, despite the fact that they were, I don't know if you would say tanking, but they were not interested in being that good. There was a casual approach to winning games in San Antonio last year. But they had lineups that were at the top of the league in terms of their net rating. And those all obviously included Wemby. But they were odd to see on a team that generally sucked. They didn't, they win like 25 games or something. But you looked at these lineups and you're like, wait, how do you have like a top 5 lineup on this team? And that's what we're seeing again. This season among lineups that are playing a lot of minutes. You've got Boston with their lineup starters plus 21, extremely good. Indiana, with one of their lineups, their starters with Mathurin in there, like around plus 20.
Ugh.
And then right here, Chris Paul, Castle, Champagny, Barnes, Wemby, plus 18. Like they are extremely good. They have another
Barnes
lineup.
Yard Dog is in there. Shout out to his long ass career.
I mean, basically, when Sohan isn't on the floor,
I like
the
Sohan.
Spurs are the Spurs are invincible. They're so freaking good when he's not playing, and Wemby is. They're just crazy good.
Sohan's a man without a position. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Sohan. I think he's a cool player.
But where do you play him? He's so weird. He's not. They tried him at point guard. They tried him at center. He's not really like your prototypical wing forward. I love him. He's just weird.
Well, he also has the unfortunate quality of hampering your best player. It's less about what he is or isn't, that when people play them, they put their center on him, don't guard him, and then have them help out on Wemby, and it fucks up the whole offense.
Yep. Exactly. Although with Wemby, the great neutralizer of a non-shooter, but Wemby's going to play the Knicks on Christmas at 12 p.m. A couple Mike Breen bangs, and he's going to be the face of the league or not?
I mean, he might be. I feel like this 12 games coming up for Wemby is really exciting and will probably make or break him as an MVP candidate, which I'm saying, I don't know, could go either way. If he has a great run here and we see him on a high stage, besting the guys who are ahead of him in this conversation, and the Spurs go from being a bottom dweller to being a fifth seed,
he's going to Denver Nuggets lose games, right?
Yeah, he's going to be an MVP candidate, and he might even jump into the lead. So his game's coming up. I don't know if you have him.
Jokic. Come on, Jokic.
Right. So yeah, his game's on the coming up here. He has a crazy streak that we're going to see a lot of the Spurs.
He's going to play like the Hornets twice.
Well, he's got the Sixers, which is tonight, and I'm presuming Embiid plays, so that's a good one. Then he's got the Knicks on Christmas. You got him against Ant on the 29th. Skip a few games. He's got a back-to-back against Jokic on the 3rd and 4th of January. Then he's got the Bucks and Giannis on the 8th. Then he's got the Lakers against AD and LeBron in a back-to-back on the 11th and 13th of January. Then he's got the Grizz, who are,
I love that team. No pick and roll ass team. I love that team.
So very cool schedule that we're going to see Wemby versus Embiid.
Wemby versus Edie. Giannis, that's all I want.
Wemby, Edie, the clash of the Titans.
Wemby, for a decade. Let's go.
Back-to-back against Jokic is delicious.
That's awesome. And, he is exactly what the NBA needs. And if you don't fall in love with Wemby, maybe this thing ain't for you, right? Because I've never seen a player like him. So I just want to see him play because he's an outlier. He's anecdotal. And he's so good. And he's pretty savvy media-wise. And the Spurs are interesting. If you think this league is lacking star power, I don't know. There's football. There's baseball.
Well,
there's hockey.
I mean, one of the things about Wemby is last year was pretty inefficient. This year, and finished strong. This year started inefficient a bit too. And it felt like he hadn't really made progress in that department,
What's he shooting from three right now?
So right now he's shooting 35% from three.
That's better than I expected. He's not an assassin out there. He's no fast bender out there.
He's taking 9 a game, so he is letting it fly.
As he should. Whatever.
And that got a lot of criticism. Why is he taking it from three? I'm like, well, because now he's shooting 35%. And the goal is to make him an absolutely lethal, unguardable shooter because it completely destroys other teams' defense. If you have a guy standing that far from the hoop who can get that shot off anytime, and now Stephen Castle or Stefan Castle can drive and there's no help.
It's a disingenuous accusation, right? Because if you want him to drive, he is either gonna get hurt or dunk, and you can blame him for being soft or too tall. It's just like it's disingenuous.
I also think the Spurs looked at it and said, well, sure, we can use him as a role threat, but instead of having him post up and run an offense around that all the time, putting him at the top of the arc also means that he'll be back on defense.
Yeah.
So he stays up there. We do the Brook Lopez thing.
Yeah.
Where if he can make 35, 36%, he's creeping towards league average on a high volume, and he is back every single time on defense.
Yeah.
They're working on something there.
So I just remembered my bad take as I thought about it. And I agree with my previous self here. If you were playing the Spurs and you had Wemby chucking, I kind of prefer that over him just like getting layups and putting my bigs in foul trouble. Like, pick your poison, kind of, with a star like this. I want him chucking at 35%. Give it to them. And that takes shots away from other three-point shooters. Let him have it.
I think this is true. And, his free throw rate is down as a result of that. And he is an extremely good free throw shooter. So, you want him getting to the line. Mm-hmm. I just mean the Spurs are thinking about this maybe more holistically. And as a defense would also be thinking about it holistically. Mm. I think the Spurs are saying this creates crazy space and it makes sure that our transition defense is as good as anybody in the league because you just can't fast break against this guy. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of components to this idea. And I get that it superficially falls into like the narrative of guys are taking too many threes, but also his scoring efficiency now for the season is up to over 60% true shooting for the year. Like, he's now an efficient scorer. So on top of leading the league in blocks, being a great rebounder, being a good passer, he's also an efficient scorer now too. And
the league average this year is 574, if I'm correct. I just looked it up. I believe it's 574.
It's right around there for sure.
Yeah.
It might have dipped down this year to under that, but I don't know.
And forget all the nerd stuff. Does he have the aura to be the star? LeBron James had the aura. He made people mad. He made people love him. Does Wemby have that skill set?
I don't know if Wemby will make people mad because he's such a marvel. Like, he's so unusual and weird and it's hard to get mad at Wemby.
Yeah. Will there be sexuals? Will people accuse people of being dongas? Answer the question.
Maybe not in those words. But I think you see it sort of brewing.
Will there be a
philosophical
divide? Right.
I think, right. Yeah, I would say the schisms are you've got Jokic people and Embiid people are quiet right now because Embiid hasn't played. But you're going to have Jokic versus Wemby. That'll be a conversation. And then you'll have people who think he takes too many threes. Those are your current subjects of discontent. What Wemby really needs is to not make the playoffs a few times, lose in the first round, have some stinkers on the high stage, and then we can start really getting the narrative action going. We need him to really shit the bed in a big moment and be called a fraud.
If I was 8 feet tall, I'd win 6 champions out of 6 appearances.
I'd get my ass in the paint.
Get my ass to the gym. And the mic. Kobe, Mamba.
Mid-range Mamba.
You know who doesn't have to go? You know who doesn't have to hit the gym?
No, it's always in peak physical form. Cookies?
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love